excited to welcome Dean Schuster, founder and partner of truematter, a user experience strategy firm here in Columbia, South Carolina. Dean has been advocating for user-centered digital products his entire career. He oversees truematter's UX practice, leading strategic engagements for innovative regional organizations as well as the Fortune 100. Dean's work has always included researching, prototyping, and testing digital products with real users. He regularly speaks, writes, and teaches on experience design, user experience strategy, usability, user research, content strategy, and building UX-focused teams. We're so glad that you're here with us, Dean. Take it away.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. I am coming to you from the Enser building at Bull Street. This is where our office is. We survived the great fire of 2020 at the Babcock building, which is about 100 yards from our office. But everything's fine here. And we have about half of our team in the office, about half remote. I'm going to start with a little bit of a story of where I came from, and hopefully that will, if not be an inspiration, will be a relief to you. And from there, I'm going to talk a little bit about truematter. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. We'll talk about UX and the career path of UX, how you get into it, how you do it, what are people like, what do they do, what do they don't do, things like that. So at the end of our session today, you will get a sense of how you might fit into the UX universe and how that affects digital product design and so forth. Before I make definitions clear, I'm going to go back in time and tell you a little bit of story of my rise from college into this industry. So I'm going to date myself. I'm squarely smack dab in the middle of Gen X. So we gave you all the wonderful things in the internet. You're welcome. I will give boomers credit for the space race and developing the actual internet infrastructure. We did something with it. And then all y'all will make it great. We just got it started. So what happened is, let's see, let's go back to 1992, which makes me a very old person, but you should listen to me anyway. So back in 1992, I'm graduating college. Now in college, I had a double major, and my double major was religion and visual design. And I would go to these job fairs and I would look around for the religion and visual design booths, which did not exist, of course. There was no one out there wanting to give me an advertisement to come argue with us for fame and fortune, or here, why don't you do some neat drawings for us? All the engineers and the lawyers and the investment bankers and the medical workers, they all had great stuff at career fairs. And I am left to wonder what to do with myself. Now, my training in school in visual design, this is really a loose graphic design major. So I assume if a lot of people here are in graphic design in some way, shape, or form, I am one of you. Also a writer. So I got out of school, had no idea what to do. I actually, for a while, worked at Whole Foods Market, drawing all of the signs in the store. This was actually a company that Whole Foods ultimately bought, and everything they did was hand-drawn. So I had a great time, worked there during school and worked there a little bit after. Now I made dirt, I made no money, but I enjoyed it, and it got me, you know, going in some way, shape, or form. But it's not associated with training. I could have drawn those things without going to college. So I did find a business magazine local. This is in the Raleigh-Durham area. And they needed folks to do work. And they needed an editor and they needed an art director. So I came in and said, you don't need two people, you just need me. Total bravado. I mean, I had no real clue what to do. And this is back in the day. They laid out that magazine with PageMaker. And they still were doing, yeah, PageMaker is InDesign now. PageMaker is the, PageMaker is the, there was Quark. In the beginning, there was Quark, and it was okay. And then came along PageMaker, and PageMaker evolves into InDesign and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so they're dealing with PageMaker, and they were actually still pasting up their magazine. Now, in 1992, if you're pasting up a magazine, which is just so ancient, we're not even going to talk about it. It was ancient in 1992, to be clear. So I looked at all this stuff, and I remember I had a second interview and asked me all these questions, and the editor-in-chief finally says, is there anything here that you can't do? Does this all make sense to you? And I say, I got this. This is me. I'm your guy. And then I went back home and begged my friend who had a Mac to let me work all night on it to learn PageMaker in freehand, which I didn't know. And this Mac was, you know, the screen was about yay big and it was black and white. And I went through every single tutorial of freehand and PageMaker that existed in the software itself, which took me nearly all night to do. And by the time I was done, I mean, there's no internet, so I couldn't just Google that. I just had to basically use the software manuals and the tutorials within the software themselves. So I did that. I made all this stuff, and it's great. And I did get the job. And I basically bulldogged my way. The first thing I said to the publisher was, we're not going to paste up anything. I did not add the really important qualifier, which was because I don't know how to do it. It was, we need to go all digital immediately. So the very next issue was all digital. This is my early 20s, just graduated. So I don't know, 80, 100-hour weeks to make this happen. When you're in your 20s, you could totally do that. But for me, it was a commitment to, you know, I was given a chance, so I'm just going to make the most of it. I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to, you know, work my fingers to the bone, so to speak. No problem. Actually, I had a lot of fun doing it as well. Now, the pay wasn't awesome even then, but I didn't expect my pay to be great right out of school. No problem there. Now, that whole gig went fine, and then in 1994, early 1994, I guess, I might be getting the number wrong. I'm with this job about 1.5 years, and a friend of mine who worked for a company called NCR, which is National Cash Register, they ultimately were purchased by AT&T, all this crap. Anyway, he says, you gotta come by. You have got to come to my office. I have something you need to see. And I was like, I can't imagine what could be at your horrible cube farm, but okay, let's go. And I get there, and he shows me on a computer screen, he says, look at this, look at this. This is Microsoft. And I'm looking at a screen, and it's this big, you know, gray screen, and it's got a world thing, and it's got some blue links. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm looking, what software is this? What application is this? He said, no, not an application. This is real. This is happening now. This is live. This is the World Wide Web, my friend. And I said, is Apple on this? And he said, I don't know, because he was a PC guy. So I said, we're looking for Apple. And so we went and saw Apple's basically their first website. And I was like, so this is Apple? We're like looking at Apple? Can we contact them right now? And he was like, yes. And I was like, no, Surely not. Anyway, so as soon as I looked at that, I said, this is it. I've got to do this stuff. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what it could do. We had no sense of this. So on the side, he and I did some CD-ROM work. If you remember, CD-ROMs are these circular discs. They look like coasters. They have information on them. Forget it. Anyway, CD-ROMs, they'd put all these fun applications on them, and it was like the internet, only not. And they all had these, you know, crazy bulbous lozenge-like graphics and whatnot. And we decided we're going to make a CD-ROM, and we called it. This is early 1994. We called it Politics in Touch, because you could touch it. And it was for touchscreen kiosks, CD-ROM touchscreen kiosks, and you could just look at candidates and what they stood for and all this great stuff. And we had all sorts of fun doing that. It didn't go anywhere. No one wanted it. No one bought it. But when the web came by, we said, well, why is this on CD-ROM? Why couldn't this been on the web? Isn't that where it goes? So that's got us into that. And we decided to start a company in late 1994. The company was called Renaissance Interactive, based here in Columbia. And we had no idea what we were going to do. We thought we would do politics in touch. We thought we would do community development. Because at the beginning of the internet, everyone knew what we had to do, which was to make communities and connect people. There was no question about that. Everyone knew it, and everyone was trying to do it. But it was too early. There was no the infrastructure, the software, the web. It couldn't handle any of it. It was really later that came out. There's a story for later, another day. But we all tried all this stuff. What it ended up being was people wanted to get their companies online, and they wanted to put applications online. We said, we said, oh, we totally know how to do that. We didn't know how to do any of that, of course. But we learned how to do it. And one of the first gigs we got was to, and this is all going somewhere, I assure you. We're all going to come back to this in a minute. This is an important part of the discussion, I promise. We got this, there was this clothing company in town called Rax. And Barbara Rax, who owns it back in the day, she's still around, actually. She actually moved into internet-related stuff herself. But she had this clothing store on Divine Street called Rax. And we said, you know what? We're going to make Rax Direct. And we're going to make a shopping cart. And we're going to make you buy all these clothes online. And Barbara Rax said, you know, I like this idea so much, I'm going to kill my store entirely. She was very forward-thinking. I'm going to kill my store, and it's only going to be online. This is, you know, early 1995. There were, to emphasize, there were no shopping carts. They did not exist. And early on in the web, when you wanted to make something, you just had to figure it out. Now, and the sharing culture had not yet evolved in the web. So everyone was trying to build a community, and everyone was trying to build a shopping cart. And there wasn't a whole lot of communication and help going back and forth. There was more like a race to get things done. So we created a shopping cart. Now we, of course, weren't thinking well enough, and weren't in Silicon Valley and didn't fund a standalone shopping cart. We just made Rax Direct, but it meant we had to do commerce. Now I worked with, I was essentially the designer and writer. I worked with a programmer, and then there were folks who were selling the idea. And so we built an online store. Basically, I was doing what I now know to be information architecture, user experience, usability, visual design, and content strategy. These are all things I were doing. I did not know that's what I was doing. I didn't know what that was. We were just making an app. Once again, and I would say early on, our hours were show up at 8 a.m., work on this until 2 a.m., go to Waffle House, go home, sleep until 7, get up and do it again. And we did that until we had full commerce. Super fun, really. It sounds horrible and grueling, but we had fun. We were really trying to do something different. And I was becoming a UX professional, though I didn't know it. Nowadays, this is more known and understood. So I became a UX professional through the window of design and entrepreneurship and writing. Essentially made my own way, or made my own job for all intents and purposes. And at the end, after the last question is answered, what I want to do is go back and tell you how that all turned out. Obviously, I'm truematter now. I'm not Renaissance Interactive, but there's an interesting little story. And if we have time, I'll give it to you in 2 minutes at the end. But so now, suffice it to say, I did not own Renaissance Interactive. I was a partner and founder, but I owned truematter. truematter started in 2001. After the dot-com evisceration, which you might have heard of, where all the dot-com companies imploded and were destroyed in the year 2000. And out of the ashes of all that horrific destruction, and by that I mean whole companies of thousands and thousands and thousands of people gone in a matter of months. It was like the 2008 crisis, if you remember that, only it didn't happen to Lehman Brothers, it happened to like IXL. And it happened to all of these digital companies. Renaissance, to give you an idea of the bubble, Renaissance had 155 people doing web work and app work right here in Columbia. That's a bubble. Out of the ashes of all that, basically, truematter starts. And I've been doing that ever since. But now I know exactly who it is that I am, and I know why I do what I do. And this happened early in the evolution of Renaissance. I got into user testing and user prototype testing early on by accident. I just read some stuff about how, you know, we had trouble getting things right when we were building things. We made mistakes, and we just had our opinions, and we tried things that didn't work. And I said, we got to figure out a way to get this right. And that helped me understand what it meant to design for not me. And it helped me to understand how to deal with programmers who felt the same way, who had even less connection to users than people like us. And I got into low fidelity prototype testing, which was just try, you know, mock things up in paper and move them around and bring real users in. And this was happening really early in my career. And as soon as I saw how that worked, which is to say very well, you find crazy things in your design that just won't work very early. And then you just change your design, and then you go ahead and you put it together. That led me on the path to usability and user experience. I've never looked back. So pause and deep breath. I now say I'm a usability UX professional. That means I'm essentially what I would call today a digital product designer. That means I define digital products. And this is what my company, truematter, does. We as a group, we envision, research, and define what a digital product should be. And then we move on to actually design it and build it. We're actually not a back-end development company. We used to do that, and Renaissance did that, but we stop at the front end now for lots of reasons. A main reason is that we are just ultra focused in exactly what we do. And I'll talk later about how that makes us different from other types of companies in the field. We'll get to that. So it's all UX, it's all usability. And my graphic design sensibilities have served me very well in this regard, but I had to unlearn an awful lot of graphic design in order to learn how to push this discipline onto, you know, asynchronous online digital products. Very, very, very different. It's an entirely different way to design. It's an entirely different way to write. and it is an entirely different set of people you're interacting with on a daily basis. So if you are gung-ho about being a digital product designer, I think you're in the right place in a class like this. But it's important for you to start with the assumption that I had to stumble to through figuring out what the heck I should do and why. That I am a person who is defining a digital product that's not for me. It is not going to be for me. I am not the user. I will never use it. In fact, my opinion is so bad about design that I can't trust it because I'm a power user. I've been in the industry for nearly 30 years. I know all sorts of power user maneuvers. And until I had this sense of myself that I am designing for people like my mother, who is a baby boomer, who is 75, who, when I do technical support for, I started having to say things like, what are you looking at on your screen? Because I'm on the phone. I'm looking at my stuff. Describe your stuff. And it goes from there, and an hour later, we're like, okay, now there's an X in the upper right of one of these boxes. Do you see it? And this is the days before video, but this helped me understand how to be patient with novice users who don't know anything we know, yet are using the things we make. And that makes design really fascinating. It's not like graphic design in a traditional world where we are creating something and we're putting it out there and it will be judged, it may be adopted, it may be whatever, but it's done when we push it out into the world. For us as digital product designers, we're never done. We're always investigating and researching users and what they really do. There's a ton to unpack on this. I know I'm going to be skipping through things. I'm sorry. Suffice it to say, everything we do is centered on people and how they interact with digital products. We want to know who they are, what they do, why they do it. We want to observe them using similar systems, and we want to observe them using the things we design. Because only when we see and listen to people try to do things do you understand how to design for them. You cannot, and I must emphasize this, you cannot listen to any stakeholder or any user when they talk to you because they lie like rugs. They don't know they're lying. They don't understand they're lying. They don't know how to give you feedback. So don't listen to them. Watch them. Watch them attempt to do things. They'll tell you everything you need to know. So when I watch my mother attempt to use a system, I instantly know the problem. If I have to listen to her talk about it, it'll take forever. Also, stakeholders are bad at this too. They'll tell you, this is horrible, make it blue. And I'm like, no. You are expressing an opinion about something that's going wrong. And if I understand that part, I'm good. And I'll decide how to try to fix it, and we'll test it with the users, then we'll know. Anyway, that centers everything we do. Every person at our company is called a UX professional, whether they are a developer, back-end developer, a front-end developer, content strategist, a designer, production designer, copywriter, whatever. Information architect, which is a fancy word for UX designer, who doesn't draw or write or code. Anyway, all those things are important. And I should say that all of us, the designers included in the company, know a whole heck of a lot about code and a whole lot about how functionality works online. This is something that, so my first lesson, I guess, is you can do this and you could form a career in digital product design from the basis of creativity that you have now, which is graphic design or writing. No problem. Tons of stuff and opportunity in digital product design. I would argue rather less opportunity in non-digital product design. In fact, that is an understatement. a gross understatement. So in fact, if you don't understand code or understand digital products, you're so severely limiting your career, it's almost criminal. I used to say to people, and this is present company excluded because you're in the right class, but I've talked to people who have been in classes where the last questions are you sure do I have to act this way? Do I have to learn how to design? Or do I have to learn code? Do I have to learn how to be, deal with users and create interfaces and stuff like this? I was like, well, no. I mean, if you want a job, yes. Or if you would like to ignore the single greatest commercial phenomenon of the last 50 to 100 years, sure, go ahead, be my guest. You shouldn't do that, but maybe that's your thing. I mean, I'm not going to stop you from being Picasso if you're Picasso. You probably are not. So that leaves digital product design, which is rich in opportunity for people like us. Graphic designers, really good interface designers, are still sorely needed. So figuring out how to become a great interface designer, really center all of your efforts on learning how to design for screen. You are very employable with that skill. Yes, you'd be surprised at how many people we look at or talk to and we're like, you call yourself an interactive designer and you can't do this. I can't hire you because I've got this set of people behind me who can. So I'm going to talk to them. And that's how that works. Same is true for writing. If you're a writer, which really at my heart, I'm more of a writer than a graphic designer. If you can write for digital products, if you can write for the screen, you have a powerful skill that's even rarer than people who can design well for the screen. So you need to invest heavily in that. And by that, I mean, understanding things like microcopy and small interactions. We say here at truematter that content is something you do, not something you read. Say that 1,000 times and then you'll be close to my emphasis on that. But graphic design is the same way. We're designing things that people do. And all things that people do or encounter need graphic designers desperately. They don't need graphic designers who are thinking in old ways about old traditional methods or graphic design as an old discipline. It has to be something you think about at your core. So when I tell people, if you want to be a digital designer from a graphic design perspective, I will tell them to throw all of your eggs in the basket. Everything you design should be digital, bar none. You should be designing interfaces that do things, that move. You can design interfaces that people can't even see now. And there is graphic design, graphic's a bad word for that. There's real digital product design for voice interfaces. I'm not kidding. These are really amazing design problems. Honestly, we're already into AR, heavily into AR, which is going to dominate in years to come. There's tons of opportunity there. If you want to forget about web and jump on over to AR and digital product design for AR, augmented reality, strongly recommend that. But it's all about the screen, all about the screen. It's fascinating. There's people who specialize entirely on designing for screens as big as a digital watch face. It's all they do. That's what they're great at. They will make the best interface you've ever seen within, an extremely small footprint. That's a very specific skill. It's not easy, and it requires a lot of collaboration. So how are we doing? 12:30. Okay. So part of what we do here at truematter, part of what you can expect as a digital product designer, and that means a UX professional, a writer, a graphic designer, a front-end coder who designs, a front-end coder who doesn't design, all those things. You're going to have to be someone who collaborates heavily. Back in the day, I mean, way back in the Don Draper day, there would be one core partnership, and that is the creative director and the writer. And they will work side by side, hand in hand. Who had the idea first? Hard to tell. It's a very, it's a meshing of two different types of styles, one writing, one visual, to create wonderful things. Well, now that's totally expanded. You can't get away with that anymore. You have to understand and know what a lot of different people do. You have to understand what they bring to the table, and you have to understand why it's important. So as a digital product designer, remember, I'm a graphic designer and writer. But when we first started out, and this is why that backstory was important, if we wanted to do anything design-wise, you simply had to code it. So I had to learn front-end code because there was simply no other way to represent my design. So I had to dive into code and just become someone who coded HTML. That actually proved to be very interesting, and I liked it and got good at it. Now, that skill has long since laid fallow for me. Other people came along who I worked with who were so much better at it and specialized at it. It's all they did. When you want to be great at something, you need to focus and do only that and do it better than anyone. But because I learned to code, I inherently, instinctively understand serious technical problems before they manifest themselves. So I can tell you about what's going to be a problem in making a digital product, why a design can and can't work, what will make the front-end designer want to kill me, what is respecting their craft, how do I talk to them. Learning how to talk to a back-end developer, that's tough. That's tough. These are amazing people. There are engineers. Engineers are trained to say no. They're trained to identify failure, and they're trained to execute against requirements. All things that are difficult for a creative person to inherently grasp. But you have to learn how to talk to those people, because those are the people who make your design real. And then there's people like business analysts, who all they do is talk to business stakeholders and formulate requirements. And in the past of software, those were the people who were doing the design. Terrible idea, which is why all software is horrible. Because they don't understand users, they don't understand UX, they don't understand digital product design. And they're, as a whole industry, they have to backpedal on everything and figure it out all over again. So you're not alone. There's tons of people on the technical side who are still in 2020 not grasping all this. There are, of course, writers and content strategists and all this stuff. But you have to understand those people, understand how all together you work in concert to create a digital product with tons of communication, tons of trial and error, and always centered on users and strong user research. Okay. Deep breath. I can do this. I've got about 20 more minutes, and then we're just going to let the floodgates open with questions. And because I'm sure I'm missing some things that you all feel are important. So let me come back to one core point before I talk a little bit more about the types of things you can do in this field. You remember I said that, you know, when I came up, we had to force feed ourselves everything. We had to just learn on the fly. I had to do that with PageMaker. I had to do that with code. I had to do that with learning how to talk to developers, all of it. There was no rule book. There was no nothing. So Gen X has no sympathy for you. None. I have no sympathy for you. I have no empathy for you. Zero. Because we had to learn before freaking Alta Vista. There wasn't even an Ask Jeeves. Forget about Google. Google showed up in 1998. We had been working for 4 years before there was even Google. And we just simply had to figure it out. And we had to figure it out before the culture of sharing, which we actually developed, came about. So everything I learned, I had to learn from scratch by simply jumping in the deep end. There was no anything. There was no Ask Linda or lynda.com or whatever it is. None of that. Today, you have an embarrassment of riches of ways to learn about things, either through school or online. Most of it's free. It is awesome. It is like being in a learning paradise. So you can totally learn any of these things you want. If you were today decided, I am going to be an AR designer, you could totally be that. There's absolutely nothing stopping you, even if there are no classes at U of SC for it. So you can totally do it. Now, also, that means, of course, you don't have any excuse, but it also means if you're worried about figuring out how to talk to developers, best way to do it, go find them and start talking to them. Find a friend who's a developer and say, let's make something. And it'll be great and wonderful and terrible all at the same time, but you will learn a lot. I am still super humbled by people who do things differently from me, who think differently from me. There are project managers out there. There are specific types of digital project managers now. It's all they do. They're so left brain, you can't even believe it. Some of them have 2 left brains. And they force people like us to understand the implications of their choices. All that's wonderful too. You have to learn how to deal with those people. Okay, you can do lots of things from the basis that you are at now. If you're a graphic designer, you could be a digital product designer. You could focus on mobile and only do mobile design. You could do wearable design. You could think about AR design. You could focus on visual design for complex software interfaces or visual design for game interfaces. Getting into game design, wow, that's going nowhere. Just kidding. There's a lot of rich opportunity there. I would encourage you to find something you really love and throw everything at it. If you want to get into game design, that's all you should be doing. Don't come do stuff with truematter because we don't do game design. We do complex, highly functional digital products. The stuff we are doing takes like 8 months to a year to make, and we're not even coding the back end. All we're doing is researching users, envisioning, defining the product, designing it, and designing the front end. That's it. That's it. And that's a long time. So if the product is super crazy and complex, it takes a long time. There are other types of companies, though. There are companies, and you'll find them here in town. We're kind of rare for a market like this. It's truematter, total UX, big user research. That's rare for here. It's more typical you'd see an us in Atlanta or maybe Charlotte, more like Atlanta. There's tons of web companies. There's tons of companies that do what I call commodity websites. That means websites that are small, that you churn out fast. That's a legit business model that does very well still today. As a designer, you may or may not find that to your liking because you will have to design a lot and very fast and according to templates. So you just have to know what you're getting into. We don't do commodity design or template-driven design or fast design, mainly because it's just what we don't want to do it. It doesn't mean it's bad or good. It's just we are good at doing things that take a while and take a lot of user research and all that, do a lot of user testing and whatnot. It's our wheelhouse. And really, you can only build complex software by doing that. And the world needs us because most software is what's the word I'm looking for? Most software is shit. So people need us to make it right, which is good. So you can do those sorts of things with a design degree. With a content focus as a writer, the world needs great content strategists. If you become a great content strategist, just go work anywhere you want. And I mean anywhere in the world, let alone San Fran, New York, Atlanta, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Dallas, Austin, let alone those places. Content strategists they're just rare people. Here's where I say, you can't listen to how people market themselves within the context of the type of company they are. Because everyone says they do UX design, so much so that I don't even know what they mean when they say it. And this is all I do. So we're actually getting away from using the words UX and UX design because they're too buzzwordy now. Everyone says it, regardless of whether they do it, or regardless of whether they actually talk to users, have ever met one, know how to do prototypes, know how to do research, know how to do user testing, remotely or otherwise. They'll just say it. Everyone says they write or do content strategy. I have the content strategy firms or digital agencies that do content strategy well, I can count them on one hand, in my opinion. So they're rare. You will more likely find the occasional awesome content strategist spread throughout firms. That's actually a thing that's hard for us to find here in Columbia. So, okay. You could also go on and be someone who, like, you can be an information architect and define and design digital products and not be able to do design or write. You know, we have an information architect who's got more of a development background, who, you know, create wireframes that it'll hurt your soul to look at. And he can't write worth a damn. My goodness, he knows how to get deep into a system and figure out how interactions work. So there's lots of opportunity even there, even if you're not visual or not particularly creative. Most UX professionals sort of come from some other focus, like a UX pro who is really a writer, a UX pro who's really a designer, a UX pro who was a front-end coder, who was a back-end coder, who was a business analyst. It's only recently that the discipline of UX has become a thing in and of itself, that you could actually get degrees in and that you could actually formulate and start with. It's actually not that old that you can do that. So you're still in an early part of an overall phenomenon, even though the internet is essentially 25 years old, the popular web. That's not that old, so you're in good shape there. And generally lots of opportunity. Okay, we're at 12:45. I feel like I need to pause for a minute. Oh, no, before I pause, I'll give you a little anecdote. I recently had lunch with someone who's from the area who had a background in graphic design, traditional graphic design, and was able to do some level of screen-based work, but not, kind of spoke it as a second language, if that makes sense. Not very intrinsic or instinctive, not what this person did from the beginning of their career. Well, they're experiencing problems now because jobs of that sort are either not there or just kind of going away. And so if you get laid off from an agency or laid off from another place, finding another job, not easy. And you think you got it tough in 2020, try being 50 and not knowing how to do this. You know, my advice to this person was the same advice I give you. If you want to turn yourself into a digital product designer, you got to throw all of it at it. And I was very upfront with my advice, and I said, and quite frankly, you're not already doing that, so I question your commitment or ability. Because if you want to do this, you'd already be doing it. And that's a little bit of a tough medicine, but all the people that we found that are awesome, and we found awesome people from Universiy who work here today, When we found them, they were already doing this stuff. We didn't have to, they didn't have to get started. They were just, you know, how do I know the person we hired from Universiy was one of the best front-end coders I've ever met? Because that's all they did when they weren't in class, was front-end code. They didn't really have great classes. This is years ago at Universiy. So point is, you're at a good spot now. You can totally do it, but you have to move in this direction. Now I'll stop. And let me devote the rest of the time to questions. I'm sure you've got them. I'm sure I've missed a lot, Meena, of what I should have hit on.
Okay, so I'm unmuted. That was amazing. 45, yes, please have a drink. 45 minutes of constant talking, and you really took me back with the Ask Jeeves. That, like, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like GeoCities time. Like, this
We're like, have you seen this? You just asked Jeeves something. Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember distinctly being, maybe I was like 12, and my best friend, her father was in the military because I lived up in, you know, DC. So her father had Prodigy. And
yeah,
I don't know if anyone between you and me or anyone else remembers what Prodigy is, but it was like the first time I ever got on the internet. And
that's
it
crazy.
was mind-blowing, right? So we have a number of questions already in the pipeline. And I'm going to actually go ahead and start with a couple of them. And I'm also going to change my view really quickly, because right now I have the speaker view and I want to be able to see everybody. And if you don't have the gallery view for this portion, I would highly suggest doing it, just so that you can see everybody and can also
you
see
all are.
hands raised and everything. So we have a few questions in the hopper already. I'm going to ask those, and then, you know, let's open it up to the greater audience too. So Rebecca actually asks, so Rebecca is one of our graduate students, and she's asking, there she is, she's asking if you can give examples of recent projects that truematters completed and how any one project might have evolved from the first consultation meeting to the delivery.
I can.
Customer or developer.
Yeah, and I'll even share my screen. So I'll give you a sense of one project we've done. It was for what's called a real estate REIT, real estate investment trust, focusing on retail, which means these people, it sounds boring, but it's not. Nothing's ever boring when you unpack it as a designer. They do retail centers across America, which means, you know, you drive by, oh, there's a Publix and all these other stores. That's all they do, is they buy, sell, lease, develop those things. And so this is one of the biggest ones in the country. They're headquartered in Florida, and I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see here, share screen. Here we go. Okay, let's give it a go. You should be seeing a big old crazy screen that has a map on it. Okay, great. So Regency Centers is basically all about finding a property. If you were, you know, we did tons of research on the user, right? And so we found out who they were, what they did, why they did it, and let's just pick on one particular user, which is a leasing agent. This is someone who is trying to find space for a specific company, and let's say it's someone had to be an agent for Starbucks to get them over here on Bull Street, to figure out that it was a good idea and to figure out how to do it, all right? So they might use a site like this, and it's over here on my right, so that's where I'm looking. And you see all sorts of properties all over the place. Now you could already see there's visual design here, right? This is something that's not just, you know, vomited up on the screen the way a developer without a designer might do it. But this is all designed. It's all been user tested before development with real users, with their tasks in mind. And that's the part of the process that we do, that UX people do, that makes things different. So by the time we build something, we already have a very good idea that people can use it. Now we might have to fine tune it. So what we do here is we see a map, and of course you could zoom in and out of this map and see all sorts of stuff. And what you're looking for is a particular center. And every time this is all heavily back-end and front-end coded. It's also entirely accessible, WCAG AA compliant, which means if you are blind, you can use this site. So they might be looking for a property. So I'm just gonna, just pick one, but you can go through, you can do a type ahead for properties, or you can go ahead and look at these property cards. Every bit of data on the screen, and I mean every single word, is data driven from a database. And when you have to design something and have to talk to people who are database designers to figure out what words can I extract and why, and how do they fit the design, these are conversations that take a while, and they're fascinating as a designer. So let's say, I don't know, I'm just gonna pick one, Brighton Park. So Brighton Park is in Atlanta, and there's all sorts of, all the images are flowing in from data. This could be video, but there's a lot of content strategy going on in here. All the words we use were tested with users. We know that the users understand these words. They will click on these types of words more than others, right from the word properties alone. All tested. So that's what I say when I say that you can make something and not be a designer or a writer. You could just be the person who tests it, figures out if it works. But as you go through, you'll see there's tons of data to design. And you see it's a very different type of design, right? You've got to sort out data from a property or local populations or households. This is almost informational design, like signage design in an airport style work. You have very little attention, and you've got to get the words right. You got to make sure they're clearly visible and fast, because nobody reads and everyone just barely scans. That's just truth. So we have to design something for the barely scanning user. They have things like site plans. This is an actual, this is fun stuff. If you were a vector designer, all of these graphics are vector designed and completely hooked into the database. So you got data-driven design affecting vector art. That's awesome, and it's hard to do. And they have all sorts of other maps, and there's demographic data, and this little arrow here for downloading the demographic data, we didn't get that right for 3 iterations until we finally got the right design that all the users got right. And that's it. So we know that they see it here. This arrow is the thing that works. It's amazing what you figure out. It takes a lot of visual design to get all this right. This is a workhorse page that took months to design. And then if you look at, there's other ways to look at the information, depending on who you are. You might be someone who's trying to develop something new and you don't care about current data. So we're trying to work with different users who care about different things. And when all is said and done, and I could have just searched for this, and found something different. This is a project that took us like 9 months to do. It's won design awards as well as just functional stuff. We did it right here in Columbia for a Florida national company. The biggest thing that's been great about this site is that we took metrics of everything they did before we did the site, up to performance, how users engaged with the site, how much time they spent maintaining it, and we can compare that against how it all works now. Even though the site costs, and I want to emphasize this, a lot of money, it still paid for itself. By a lot of money, what can I say to be high 6-figure money. But this is serious stuff, serious app-driven stuff. That's mostly what we do. I'm going to stop that share for a minute. I can get into more stuff, but that's a recent project that we're actually doing a big redo of it this quarter, where we're adding more design and functionality, great stuff to it, adding video everywhere. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I didn't mention accessibility either, but it's all accessible, rigorously accessible, because everyone's being sued for that right now. I'm sorry, backpedal. We've been doing it forever. We've been doing accessibility and usability forever, because accessibility is just usability for everyone. So we're no stranger to it, but in recent years, a lot of companies are being sued for non-compliance. I can't get to your site. And so.
Yeah. Also, thank you for bringing up money. I don't think that we talk about money enough in art school and in design
it's
school.
It's all about money.
Yeah.
And
that's something that I think across the board, professors of design are talking about more and more, as you know, we're realizing that our students need to know how to, not just how to sell themselves and how to work you know, at the top of their game, but also how to quantify their value in a number of ways, and money is absolutely one of those ways. So I'm glad you brought that up.
We had to convince this company to work with us and to take the investment so high, because they were used to dealing with you can quote someone for web and legitimately, realistically get back such a range that you wouldn't believe it. You can get a range from $10,000 to $500,000 on a lot of projects. And these poor clients, they have no idea what to do with it. They're like, I don't even know what to trust. First of all, I don't know how to do any of this. So we encounter this a lot. And especially being in South Carolina, we have to do more of that type of education than you would have to do in a market like New York. It's totally doable. We prove our value through direct return on investment because of usability and user experience. That's not a difficult sell. It is more of a difficult sell if you're just saying, our thing is prettier than their thing. And this is why commodity projects are so cheap and have moved toward templatized approach. So there's been, if I'm going to hit on money for another 30 seconds, enormous downward pressure on the market in the since the year 2000, and it's been nothing but unabating pressure. That means what used to cost $10,000 is now free. And in terms of web, everything's been crunched down toward free so powerfully that there's an entire market developed for simply commodity-driven websites. We're going to get 20 to 30 sites out a week. And if we do that, we're profitable and it's awesome. Now you're going to sacrifice a whole lot of stuff to do that. You will sacrifice content strategy, UX, visual design, any real custom functionality. It's kind of like everything, but you can do it. So that's why, I mean, we didn't do that sort of work for other reasons, but if you're going to compete in that market, you have to set yourself up as a shop that can compete in that market. And you'll find a lot of these shops everywhere, and they have similar types of problems and similar types of successes, but huge downward pressure in price. I mean, astounding, as in people expect things to be free or a couple $100. Honestly, how long has this meeting been? An hour?
Yes.
God. I usually tell people this meeting just costs so much more than your budget. Yeah. We're not the right company for you.
Yeah. And you know, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And it is in line with everything that I'm seeing in terms of trends for the landscape of what design is looking like, but I am not seeing enough of the following up with education. at design education across the nation. There are a few programs that are doing it really well, but I think, as with being a designer, that it is imperative to be nimble and flexible. I do believe that good design is table stakes at this point, and that anyone sort of working in pretty, as you put it, is setting themselves up to be usurped very quickly and eclipsed in the blink of an eye, and it's not sustainable. It's not the long view. So UX research and being able to articulate the needs and then produce based on those needs, I can't see a time where that's not on the horizon.
Yeah, I view it as just design. If you really want to get down to brass tacks, design is just understanding the core of a problem and how you have to solve it, and that's it. So that's why, thus, digital product design. Yeah. And that's why we call everyone in the shop digital product designers or UX professionals. I think we're just doing design, and UX is still, it's still in shakeout phase. We've been doing it forever, so it feels like forever, but we still have to tell people what it is, which is a little weird, but yeah, they'll get it.
So on that note, here is question is, how do you conduct research as a student or a recent grad?
Well, the beautiful thing about researching for the web is that there's web users and app users and wearable users all around you. Mm-hmm. All you have to do when you're trying to figure out who a user is to make sure they're the right user. So if I'm trying to think about designing say you're designing for a nonprofit, right? Or you have a project associated with a nonprofit. Well, you have to figure out, well, there's a difference between the nonprofit or a customer, the people who need a thing, and the people for whom you're making a thing. You need to figure out who those people are. For instance, a good example is a nonprofit in town is Friends of Harbison State Forest. I happen to be president of that nonprofit. And when we had someone, work on a site, which is yet to launch actually, I was essentially a customer, but not really the user, even though technically speaking, we can argue that I am because I use the forest. But users need certain things from a nonprofit site because of the services a nonprofit site offers. So figuring out what they are is really important. So the research we would do there is to see how people conceive of the Friends of Harbison State Forest. By the way, if you've never been to Harbison State Forest, it's a massively amazing green space not too far from here. One of the greatest green space and trails for mountain biking and running basically in the Southeast. It's like 10 miles away from here. What do people need from an organization? How do they think of the organization? As soon as you start organizing those thoughts, you realize what is the biggest thing they need. And so what we learned was the biggest thing a user needs from the Friends of Harbison State Forest is to understand when the trails are and are not closed. All this big highfalutin stuff we do and how we do it and the grants and the blah, 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 blah. And all people want to understand immediately is, can I go to the trails to go mountain biking? Will someone please tell me? Because the state website and apparatus is so horrible, I need someone's help. Anyway, so that tells us how to design. And all we did was talk to people who are actual users. That's it. So if with the example I gave you for Regency centers, we just talked to leasing agents. We talked to people who would recruit different types of, because they're recruited, different types of stores or different types of places, or who were being recruited or farming themselves out, like the representative of Starbucks, who can go anywhere. Why to your place? So we talked with those people, but more than talk to them, we went through all sorts of participatory exercises with them. We had them, we do personas, which you've probably heard of, our user archetypes. Who am I? What's important to me? What gets in my way? What are my tasks? how do I do things? One of the things that we do at truematter is that we actually don't make personas. We lead actual users through the making of their own personas, because we realize, why are we making personas? We're not that person. So our process has to do with getting that information out of them. There's a lot to that. But we want to understand their motivations, their tasks, and we do that in a way that helps them speak to us in ways that give us the information we want. Because you can't ever ask someone, well, what do you want? Well, they don't know what they want. You have to get the right information out of them, and you figure it out based on that. But we just spent a lot of time with leasing agents. We spent a lot of time with these people. Then we showed them prototypes. By the way, different leasing agents, prototypes. You never show a user the same thing twice because they're biased. You want to show new people things. Different leasing agents will show them prototypes. Then we'll show more advanced prototypes. We'll show the preview site before it goes out. So we've had users see and respond and attempt to use things all along the way. So by the time we launch, we have a really great idea of what that leasing agent will or won't do, or what's important to them. And across the way, we've learned a ton about them. And always, 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 user research or user testing of this sort reveals to you something you did not know. And if you had designed not knowing it, you would have designed something wrong. So it'd be like trying to design something for people who are blind, but not designing for a keyboard. You know, if you don't talk to people who are blind or have them test your site, how do you know you did it right? There's plenty of tools you could use to sort that out, but the tools are super limited. They're not humans. You just find people and you talk to them. There's all sorts of disciplines around how to deal with them and get information in an unbiased way. Story for another day.
Yeah, I think with our families so close to us, hopefully by now, during this time, and even, the way that we've all found ways to become interconnected, even virtually at this point, hopefully if you have any user that you're thinking about, especially for the needs of your nonprofit organization, that if you're thinking about them, ask away, don't wait for permission for anything that you do. Just
when in doubt, anyone not you is good. Start there. But you want people who use the services of a nonprofit. You want to talk to the stakeholders in a nonprofit too. Just keep in mind, if you simply, you don't have to know a whole lot about how to do this. If you just take a certain mindset. Yeah. Imagine that you are an experimental scientist. All you want is information. All you want is data. It doesn't matter where the data go. It doesn't matter what the data are. You just want it. You don't have to, you have to be dispassionate. You have to be someone who doesn't have an opinion. And if you can do that, you will hear people. And if you can do that, it means you won't say something like, well, we were thinking of making this, I'm being silly now. We're thinking of making this area red, not blue, because blue is better, right? You'd never say something like that. When we have people look at prototypes, we usually start with simple questions that are totally dispassionate, totally scientific. What are you looking at? Tell me what you see here. Well, I see this or that. Well, what do you mean by that? We do very little talking. Would you expand on that? Would you tell me more about that? You said you didn't like this. What did you mean by that? Why didn't you like it? What do you think it does? What do you think it should do? Those are great questions to ask people, and they'll give you everything you need. Then later you'll watch them try to do it, and then you'll see how their thoughts match up.
I'm writing some of those questions in the chat for everybody. And by the way, folks, I will save the chat after and upload that so that you guys have it. So Jensen does have a question as well. And her question is around how many people do you usually work with on a project? And do you spend much time coding, or are there specific people that you work with that only do coding? I think we answered that, the last part of that question.
Yeah. Our typical team will have 5 or 6 people, but then there's other people in the orbit who come in and out. But there's a core set of people always on a project, and that's going to be a project manager, a UX lead. That means someone who's responsible for the user experience. This might be an information architect or just a digital product designer, a content strategist, visual designer, front-end coder, back-end coder. That's a core type of team. Those are most disciplines, but depending on the project, we'll have more of certain areas or whatever. And you find those are standard roles. I mean, we might bring in people like a true business analyst or a UX lead who has a business analyst background to do things. Occasionally, when we have just too much to do, we'll actually farm out some front end with people who we respect and work with all the time. We've actually even farmed out back end sometimes. But that's just with some very select partners. So that's a typical team. As far as me, I haven't coded in, I don't know, I stopped coding in about 2004. So if you ask me how to code, I'll say, I don't know, you totally have to talk to someone way younger. Which is fine, I think, because the landscape for back-end and front-end code online, it changes so fast. It's so fast you can't believe it. It's our job to keep up with it, and it makes our head spin. So I can literally go into a meeting and people are talking about something I have never heard of before. And they're already using it, and I've never heard of it. And so, I mean, I remember the day I went into a meeting, and they said, "Yeah, we're going to do this. It's we're using Angular. We're doing with Foundation and Feather, and we're going to do a little Kendo UI." And I was like, "But aren't you going to do that with Barney Rubble?" And they're like, "No, what's that?" And you see over in the corner, like that, someone's like, "God, I don't know what Barney Rubble is." It's nothing. But the fact that I can get a group of professionals to Google almost any word I want just by saying it's a thing, that's true today. So I wouldn't get too hooked.
Yeah, I will second that. Of course, you are the guru here, but I'm cheerleading you on that, because I remember a buddy of mine was really like the guy who knew Ruby, and this was like
yeah, Ruby's
back in
great.
07. And now it's like, and he was making all of the connections and all of the money at that time, but now again, they just eclipse themselves so rapidly.
Absolutely. Ruby, just programming language, and it dropped like a bomb, and just blew up big, but these things will change. So it's a good lesson is, no matter what you learn, you have to adhere to principles more than anything. And there's principles to coding that will exist across tools, just like there's principles to UX that will exist across media. So if you learn the rules, for instance, of how people think and how they interact with things, totally, it worked for early computers. It works for the web, it works for mobile, it's gonna work for AR, it's gonna work for holograms, it's the same stuff. People are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They do not change, just the technology.
Yeah. So those were all the questions that we have so far in the chat. I do have one question that I know everybody would like me to ask, but they haven't asked me to ask it. What would you be looking for in someone who's coming out of school, graduating?
That's a good question. We look for the same stuff all the time. And the horrible thing, the horrible truth about finding a job when you're coming out of college is something you have to square yourself with immediately, which is, it is not about you. It is so not about you, it's not even funny. It's about me, because I'm the person, and there's many me's. I'm the person who has a need. I'm the person who's going to pay the money. I'm a person who's taking all the risk. So when you're in an interview for whatever position, as long as you remember, If you interview with me, it's totally about me. It is so tangentially about you. And it's about you in the sense that you have skills and that you have energy and that you have displayed a desire to learn, because no one is going to expect you to be experienced coming out of college. It's just not a thing. If you've had an internship and done things like that, that's awesome. That helps a ton. But ultimately, someone will take a risk on you. I view that as a super good thing, because someone took a risk on me, and I totally BS the guy. I mean, honestly, I told him I knew stuff, if you remember, that I didn't even know. But, you know, I went after it and learned and had to prove it. So for a company like me, though, there are certain basements or whatever that have to happen. Like if you come to us and you don't know anything really about digital product development in any way, or how it works or why it works, or don't have skills that have pushed you in that direction, we probably just can't even talk. You know, now we have found interns that we interviewed them. We're like, I don't even know what this person can do, but we love them so much. We're like, let's bring them on. And that's been about like 75% to 25% awesome for us, because we found people like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad we brought this person in. They could do anything. So there's a lot to be said for work ethic and passion in this stage in your lives. Find an internship. That's amazing. That does wonders. But other than that, the people that we've found simply are already so immersed in digital product design. That's a telling sign. So if we're trying to look for someone who does front-end coding, we're going to have our front-end coders talk to them, and we'll find out real quick whether they're kind of talking about it or no, they code all the time. If you're into front-end code, it's what you do. It's what you do in class. It's what you do at home. It just is. If you're a designer too, it's like us. I mean, I design stuff in my spare time. I've always done it because it's what I am. You know, so I can't not do it. So sometimes we'll say, you know, what are you doing in your spare time? And it's the amazing people. It's usually like all the stuff they're applying for. So that's generally true. Beyond that, if you're a designer, you have to show an online portfolio. There is no such thing as a not online portfolio. I won't even look at a physical portfolio. It's why I can't, you know, it's not, that might be different advice you hear from everyone, but for me, digital or no. For me, if I'm looking at someone's work, I have to put myself in a position to say, what if that's my work that I have to sell to a client right now? Am I okay with that? That's the question everyone will ask. So quality over quantity every time. Show me 2 good things, not 5 things and 2 of them are good. How's that so far? If you're a writer, you're going to show me stuff you've written. If you're an information architect, show me stuff you've tried to organize online. We can usually spot people who have promise. It's not hard to spot. And it's a symptom of promise is that you're just totally into it. That's a huge thing right now. Beautiful thing about that is that's just attitude. So if you're passionate, super into it, trying new things, chances are very good you'll get an internship. Very good, even in this day and age. Although it's gonna kind of suck to be you in 2021 when you graduate, if you're headed to graduate. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I
graduated into a recession.
Hey guys, I feel you. I graduated in 2004, and I was looking through newspapers for jobs, living in my parents' basement.
You said newspaper.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Paper?
that, yeah, I know. I think that the only way that you can come into a classroom full of students and actually teach is if you've lived the life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes left. of Dean's time and of your time. So I want to open the floor. Unmute yourself. Feel free to just ask away. Don't worry about raising in terms of like hitting the raise your hand button or anything. But Markel, you've unmuted yourself. Go
Yeah,
this is Scotch. This has been great.
Very nice. Dean, I just had a quick question. You speak on front-end development and kind of that being your specialty. What kind of software and programs are you guys using? Are you guys using the Adobe Suite? Where are you entering with that?
Okay, so we're heavy into the Adobe Suite. We just call it the Adobe tax that we pay. We used to design a long time ago now in Photoshop as a just visual design. That gave way, believe it or not, to InDesign because of its typographic control, which has since given way to XD. So we do all of our design in XD. We use it as a design tool, not really as a prototyping tool. There's a lot of there's so many tools. By the way, we're in like the golden age of tools. If you can't find a good tool, you're just not looking. But we use a tool called Axure for our prototyping. We use it as opposed to Sketch or Balsamic or anything like that because it has really sophisticated scripting and presentation rips out to HTML capability. It's pretty hardcore. It's not perfect, but it's hardcore and we need something hardcore. So we're working on a system now that's got like 500 screens in it. We need something good that can handle it. So we use Axure as a tool, but we've used all sorts of other stuff. We use Sketch every now and again. Adobe Suite's big. For front-end coding, I find that the front-end coders who are the best are people who just give me give me a blank screen, let me start coding. There's all sorts of tools. They change like the seasons, but we're doing, we do stuff in Microsoft.NET, tools. We do stuff that's open source. It depends on the client. A lot of Git. We do a lot of Foundation, a lot of Bootstrap still. But a lot of it is just raw, use a tool that helps create a good coding environment. It has source control and all sorts of stuff like that. But those are the main tools. You don't need a ton of tools. And on the project management side, I heard y'all are using Basecamp. We've used that in the past. We use something called Teamwork now, which is similar to Basecamp. It does some different things. We use Slack an awful lot. We invite all our clients to that. So those are the basic tool sets. You find it very common. I'm not really worried, like if someone came to us and said, oh no, you use Axure, but I'm like a Balsamic person. I would say, well, it doesn't matter. Are you good at Balsamic? Great, just come on in, you'll get Axure pretty quick. So for a digital product designer, I care about how good you are, not necessarily the tool you use. If you're good, you'll handle the tool. But it helps if you're already good at something like XD or Sketch or Balsamic or Axure or Adobe Suite, whatever. Depends on what you want to do or be, I guess.
While we're waiting for the next question, okay, Rebecca, go.
Sorry, I didn't know if we have enough time still.
6 minutes.
Okay. Are you guys, is your team working remotely and how is that going for you?
Well, yeah, the good news about all the stuff we do as digital product designers, you can work. We already invested in remote work before COVID-19. So just sending everyone to go do remote work was nothing. We didn't skip a beat. So right now, I said half of our team is in the office, about half remote. And that just depends on, really, we've just said, the office is open if you want to come in. And we have good socially distancing ability. Like I'm in an enclosed space here, for instance, and most of our people are. So that's nice, but other people are more comfortable staying home. So like, fine, go for it. That's another wonderful thing about this industry. You can be anywhere. And it's been very good for us in Columbia because Columbia is a great place. And I absolutely love living here. I'm an outdoorsy person. You know, low cost of living, yet I can do work wherever. Awesome.
Do you feel like working remotely has affected your collaboration on your team or the way you guys do research?
You have to be a lot more intentional about collaboration when you're working remotely. So we talked about this earlier today, looking into what other tools we might try to do remote brainstorming and whiteboarding better. But by and large, we collaborate well already because we have to. So I haven't seen a big uptick, but in terms of management, in terms of really keeping connected to people in a lot of ways you need to in a company, that's been a challenge for my business partner and I to make sure that we're keeping on top of things. How are people doing? Are they, you know, in the land of COVID, people can get depressed. So we're like trying to see, is this person feeling down, or do we need to talk to them, and do we need to do something better with collaboration? That's just been, as leaders, we've had to deal with that. In terms of research, there's a lot of great remote tools. A lot of our clients, they have strictures on in-person meetings anyway. A lot of big clients, and we work with a lot of corporations, they're not going to bring their people, and I mean any of them, back into the office until 2021, Q1. And so they're certainly not going to say, yeah, let's go do a big old user exercise in person. So we have to figure out how to do those remotely. We're actually working on one of those right now. It can be done. It's not perfect, but it can totally be done. There's so many great usability remote tools. It's insane. I don't even understand why people make new tools now. There's so many. To make a new tool that's better and rises to the top, it's got to be great. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm pivoting so much teaching. So I've found the same thing to be true in terms of being in the classroom and doing those exercises, those workshops versus being online, and how all of that is sort of changing.
It's been tough. I do a lot of public speaking, and you know, that's no longer in person. That's right here. And that people have had to figure out how to do conferences better. That has not been easy, but they're getting better at it. As we get down into like the end of 2020, people are starting to realize, oh, okay, all right, now here's what's working, here's what's not. So we'll probably do a massive leap forward in terms of how we collaborate online because of COVID. I know that's, you know, every horrible thing usually leads to some good things, and one of them will be technology, infrastructure, collaboration. That's going to get a lot better. Before we go, I should add that you can find me personally on LinkedIn. Please do that. I will accept your request. If you have questions for me later, I'll totally answer them. I might not answer them like in a super quick, don't worry about that. I'll do the best I can. But my email is in there. It's out there for anyone to see as well. If you're interested in things like internships, you need to ask me about it. The way I ever got junk like that was just by being bold and asking anyway. You should do the same. Worst case scenario, we'll say, sorry, we don't have one right now. Big deal. No is not a big deal. So feel free to do that. Or if you just want to talk to, or if you have a particular passion, like for front end or something else, and I might be able to connect you with someone else on my team. You have a conversation about something very specific. Can't promise, okay, I'll add that because my project managers will kill me. But do try, and don't be dissuaded if I take forever to respond to you. I promise you the best I can, but I get a lot of that, so.
Well, thank you for pointing that out and offering that. Just to have that line, I've put I put TrueMatter's website on the chat. I've put the blog on the chat for TrueMatter as well, and I put Dean's LinkedIn link on the chat. And the last thing that I want to make sure to bring up, if there's any UXSC or yeah, I just wanted to bring that up in case anyone wanted to keep diving into this.
Yeah, so TrueMatter's organized UX South Carolina, which is a meetup group. You can find us via Meetup and get hooked up with that. We had been doing quarterly in-person meetings with just really trying to focus on 4 great meetings a year, all about UX. Amazing stuff, always free, always food, which should, I'm in college, it's great. You should come to those, although we haven't had one in a while. We're trying to organize a virtual one now, but to be honest, it's been tough we've been concerned about Zoom fatigue, and we've actually been very busy, so it's been hard to get that going. But we'll have UXSC will come back in force, try to do something at the end of this year and get back to in-person stuff in 2021. But it's always free, and there's a lot of great people there. You could even, you can meet other professionals there or even ask questions. I believe Meetup allows you to do that.
Yeah, and you'll always know one person there. Well, Dean, you'll know, and me. So thank you, Dean, so much for your time. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Students, it was wonderful to see your faces again. Thank you for being here. I know that you appreciated Dean and being here, and if you don't mind, just give him a round of applause, because this was a lot of talk.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I love talking to you guys. You guys are in the right place. You'll be fine. No matter how hard it is, you'll be fine.